When my firstborn was 6 weeks old, she was an amazing sleeper. She'd go to bed at 9:30 at night and sleep straight through until 6 in the morning, and I thought we'd hit the jackpot. But at 3 months old, everything changed. Suddenly, she started waking up during the night, and at first it was once each night, and I thought, that's fine, I can handle that. But soon it went from once a night to 2 times a night, and eventually every 2 hours. I went from a well-rested mum to completely exhausted in record time. Now I needed to find the reason, and my instinct was to assume that it was caused by teething. But guess what? Those pesky teeth didn't show up for another 3 months. Turns out it wasn't teething pain at all. 2 more kids and another 7 years working as a pediatric occupational therapist, I now know that the real culprit was me. I had no idea at the time, but I was the one who started those overnight wakes, and the way I handled them encouraged her to keep waking up. So let's talk about how my responses to her waking actually made them worse, and what you can do instead to avoid this same problem. Plus, I'll also walk you through 2 other ways that I've since learned I was negatively impacting her sleep and how to avoid those too. So to understand how I ended up making her night wakes more frequent, we need to look at how I used to put her to sleep. For every nap and at bedtime, I would either rock her or feed her to sleep. Now, that in itself generally isn't a problem during the newborn phase. It's really common and works quite well. But between 3 to 5 months of age, their sleep patterns mature. This change is often referred to as the 4-month sleep regression, and instead of cycling between just 2 stages of sleep, they start to have 4 stages of sleep, and at the end of each cycle, it's normal for babies to partially or fully wake up. And it's those partial or full wake-ups at the end of each cycle that led to the problem. Because I was rocking my daughter to sleep, she would fall asleep in my arms. But when she woke up between sleep cycles, she'd find herself alone in the crib. It's similar to falling asleep in your bed and then waking up in a completely different room with no idea how you got there. You'd likely feel confused and possibly scared, wondering what just happened. That's exactly what was happening to my daughter. She'd wake up thinking, where did my mum go? Looking back, I now know that I could have avoided this by helping her learn how to fall asleep in her crib without needing to be rocked or fed to sleep. Now, I'm not saying I should have just placed her in the crib, walked out of the room and left her to cry herself to sleep. Instead, what I wish I did was give her the opportunity to learn how to fall asleep in her crib while I was right there. Now, there are many different ways to do this. In fact, that could be a whole video in itself. So rather than going into all of them, here's one strategy that you can try with your little one. Gently pat your baby to sleep while they're lying in the crib instead of in your arms. And remember, falling to sleep in the crib is a skill. So your baby will need some practice to get the hang of it. So if it doesn't work right away, don't give up. Just keep trying. Now, while rocking and feeding her to sleep was one reason she started waking up overnight, it wasn't the only one. Believe it or not, my attentiveness was also sabotaging her sleep. Every time she would stir or make a noise, I would rush into her room, hoping to settle her before she got too worked up to go back to sleep. But what I didn't realize at the time, that I've since learned through studying infant sleep, is that babies are noisy when they sleep. They thrash around, cry out, giggle, smile, and even open their eyes while they're in REM sleep. These sounds and movements are normal and usually don't need any response from us. On top of that, it's also common for them to make noises, shift positions, or even cry out for a few seconds when they briefly wake up between sleep cycles. But if they're given a chance, meaning if I didn't rush in and start patting or picking my daughter up, they might actually settle back down to sleep and continue sleeping without any help. So, by rushing in at every noise or movement, what I was actually doing was either waking her up from REM sleep or turning those brief wake-ups into full-blown wake-ups. Thankfully, by the time my second child was born, I knew how to avoid making this mistake again. The answer was simple. Whenever my son made a noise or moved around, instead of rushing in, I would pause, watch and listen. This simple pause gave him the chance to self-soothe and settle back to sleep on his own if he was just transitioning between sleep cycles, or let him continue sleeping if he was in REM sleep, and it also gave me the time to determine if he was truly awake and needed my attention, which generally meant a feed. This small change led to more continuous sleep for both of us. Now, before I talk about my third mistake, I want to share something that made daytime naps a lot easier with all of my kids, and that was knowing what to expect at different ages. It really helps to understand how many naps they might need each day, how long they'll be awake between naps, what their nap schedule could look like, and how much total sleep they generally need. And that's why I created the New Parent's Guide to Naps. In this guide, I cover everything you can expect from your baby from the newborn stage all the way up to when they drop that last daytime nap. So if you think this will be helpful, just click the link in the description below to get your free copy. Okay, now let's talk about my third mistake, which is what I did during nighttime feedings. In my desperate attempts to stay awake while feeding her, I would turn on the TV and binge watch my favorite shows. I thought this was a genius move, but little did I know I was actually encouraging her to stay awake for longer. And here's why. The bright lights and sounds from the TV were confusing her brain, making her think it was time to stay awake instead of sleep. It was like the TV was saying, let's stay up and watch one more episode. Then there's melatonin, the sleep hormone. Our bodies start producing melatonin in the evening as it gets darker, signaling that it's time to wind down and get ready for bed. However, the lights from screens, like the TV, can trick our brains into thinking it's still daytime, and this confuses our bodies and suppresses melatonin production. Without enough melatonin, it becomes much harder to fall asleep and stay asleep through the night. So, by turning on the TVs during nighttime feedings, I was not only keeping her awake with the lights and the noise, but I was also messing with her sleep hormones. And this made it much harder for her to go back to sleep, causing more wake-ups and restless nights for both of us. Looking back, I realised it would have been smarter to keep the room dark and quiet during feedings. This would have helped her understand that nighttime is for sleeping, not for catching up on my favourite shows, and it would have also helped her natural melatonin production, making it easier for her to fall back to sleep. And on those nights when I was truly exhausted and needed something to watch to stay awake, I should have put in my headphones, turned on the night mode on my mobile phone, dimmed the screen, and then watched the show on it instead of the TV. As this would have helped me stay awake without creating a stimulating environment that kept her awake for longer than necessary. Now, something that I did right with my firstborn to encourage more restful nights is use white noise, as numerous studies have shown that white noise helps people of all ages, including babies, kids and adults, fall asleep faster and reduces nighttime wakings. However, what many parents aren't aware of is that if it's used incorrectly, white noise can lead to long-term and even permanent hearing loss. So, to avoid making this life-altering mistake, make sure you watch this video next. In it, I'll walk you through the safest ways to use white noise, from setting the perfect volume to positioning the machine correctly in your baby's room. Plus, I'll show you a simple test that you can do to ensure that your white noise machine is set up optimally for your baby's sensitive ears. This information is crucial for creating a safe and peaceful sleep environment for your little one.